He was America's most beloved cowboy. Rich, famous, and untouchable. But the life Gene Autry actually lived behind that smile would have shocked every single fan who ever sang along with him. Here's something most people never think about. In 1942, one of the highest paid entertainers in America, a man making the equivalent of millions in today's money, walked into a military recruiting office and signed up to fly dangerous cargo missions over war zones. No cameras, no press release, no fanfare. Just a man who decided that the version of himself the world loved wasn't enough. That man was Gene Autry. And if you think you already know his story, I promise you, you don't. Not really. Let's go back to where it actually begins. Not Hollywood. Not Nashville. Not even a radio station. A rented farm near Tioga, Texas, 1907. Gene Autry came into this world with zero guarantees. His father Delbert was a horse trader, which sounds romantic until you realize it meant the family was constantly broke, constantly moving, and constantly starting over. His mother Elnora was sickly. The house was quiet in the way that only poverty makes a house quiet. By the time Gene was old enough to understand what money meant, he was already working to get some. Field labor, hay baling, shining shoes, sweeping floors. Whatever paid. He didn't have a childhood in the way most people picture one. He had a training ground. And somewhere in the middle of all that scraping and grinding, he saved up $8. $8. And he bought a guitar. That guitar wasn't a hobby. It was a lifeline. When you have almost nothing, music becomes the one thing nobody can repossess. His grandfather, a preacher, taught him that endurance wasn't just a virtue, it was survival. And Gene absorbed that lesson so deeply, it would define every single decision he ever made. Here's where the story gets real. Gene landed a job at a train station, a telegrapher, punching out Morse code in the dead of night. Long shifts, empty silence, just him and that guitar. One night, someone stopped and listened. Different versions of the story say it was Will Rogers, the famous comedian and folk hero, who told the young Gene that his voice was something special, that he should go find a bigger stage. So in 1928, Gene did the terrifying thing. He went to New York, and New York did not care. No contracts, no opportunities. Money gone in weeks. He came back to Oklahoma without a deal, without a win, and without the luxury of pretending the trip had gone well. But here's what separates Gene Autry from a million other talented people who tried and gave up. He didn't quit. He just recalibrated. Back in Tulsa, he started appearing on local radio. KVOO, billed as the yodeling cowboy. Simple, authentic, real. People remembered him. And in 1931, everything changed. He and Jimmy Long recorded That Silver-Haired Daddy of Mine, a song about longing, regret, and family that hit Depression-era America like a fist to the chest. People weren't just listening to it, they were living inside it. Sales exploded. His name spread. And for the first time in his life, Gene Autry wasn't a struggling voice in the dark. He was a name people recognized. By 1934, Hollywood noticed something. When Gene appeared in a small role in Old Santa Fe, just a few scenes, a couple of songs, audiences responded to him more than anyone else in the film. Something about that face, that voice, that quiet steadiness just worked. Republic Pictures signed him almost immediately. And what they built around Gene Autry was nothing short of a cultural phenomenon, the singing cowboy. From 1935 onward, Gene churned out film after film, nearly 93 features over roughly 2 decades. His horse champion became almost as famous as he was. Merchandise, comic books, toys. The Gene Autry brand was everywhere. But here's the part nobody talks about enough. Maintaining that image was exhausting in ways the audience never saw. Gene's characters had to be perfect. Righteous. Calm. Never too dark. Never too real. And while America needed that stability, especially during the Depression and then the war,
The man behind the hat was carrying pressures that never made it onto the screen. The filming schedules were relentless. Scripts never stopped coming, and the expectation to keep being exactly who the public loved, without deviation, without failure. That's not stardom. That's a very well-paid cage. And then came 1942. Gene Autry was 35 years old. He was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. His radio show, Melody Ranch, reached millions of families every week. He was, by any reasonable measure, at the peak. And he enlisted. Not for a PR photo, not for a USO tour where you shake hands and sign autographs safely behind the lines. He trained as a pilot. He flew transport missions on dangerous routes. He went from a salary that most Americans couldn't dream of to just over $100 a month. While he was gone, Republic Pictures didn't miss a beat. They groomed a new singing cowboy. Leonard Sly rebranded as Roy Rogers and quietly handed the throne to someone else. The system Gene had built his life inside had already learned how to run without him. Gene knew this might happen. He enlisted anyway. That tells you everything about who he actually was. When Gene returned in 1946, the welcome mat was there. But the world had shifted. Audiences still loved him, but they'd also fallen in love with new faces. Reclaiming his position wasn't automatic. It was a fight, conducted quietly, piece by piece. And this is where Gene Autry revealed his truest talent. Not singing, not acting, building. He launched the Gene Autry Show on television in 1950, but this time he wasn't just the star. He was the producer, the owner. He understood now that the real power was never in performing. It was in controlling what got performed and who got paid. Flying A Productions followed. Annie Oakley, the Range Rider. Buffalo Bill Jr. Gene wasn't just keeping himself relevant. He was creating a factory for other people's success while owning every brick of it. When Republic Pictures tried to profit from his old films on television without giving him a fair share, he sued. The outcome wasn't fully in his favor, but the message was crystal clear. Gene Autry would not be used as raw material by anyone. He eventually got his film library back, and that library became a permanent income stream, independent of whether he ever worked again. Through the 1950s and 60s, Gene quietly transformed into something America rarely sees, a self-made media mogul. Radio stations, television holdings, including KTLA, a music publishing company, a record label, and then, in one of the most unexpected moves of his life, he bought a baseball team, the California Angels. The net worth climbed into the hundreds of millions, and the name appeared on wealth rankings alongside oil barons and industry titans. But here's the quiet tragedy running beneath all of it.